Hello and welcome to SEO Ranking's Do Follow podcast. Here we hold regular talks with SEO and digital marketing experts to discuss how to SEO topics and share actionable insights with the SEO community. So, subscribe to stay on top of everything going on in SEO. Today's episode is all about discussing what SEO has in store for us this year. We are extremely happy to be joined by celebrities from the SEO world who need no introduction, Lily Ray and Barry Schwartz, to talk about search at a crossroads, the impact of AI on Google in 2024. To ask our guests all the right questions and ultimately provide you, our listeners, with actionable insights and predictions for the year ahead, SEO veteran and digital agency owner Erin Sparks will be picking the brains of our amazing experts.
Hey there.
Howdy there. Thanks for bringing me in to be able to discuss this with these stellar individuals. Barry, Lily, it's great to be able to talk with you about this very important conversation. And we've been talking over the course of years about many things, and this is kind of a accumulating discussion here that's really important to be able to set at least a course of action going into next year. So before anything else, Lily, Barry, how do you think that advancements in natural language processing are going to impact search in 2024? That's a really broad question, but give me your thoughts. Lily first.
Yeah, that's a big question. That's what Google has been doing in the direction they've been going in for a long time. And I think we've seen a lot of different advancements with regard to like Google's ability to understand queries and intent, and arguably getting better over time. I think they've had some certain problems, maybe not as much related to NLP, but I think search is going to become more personalized in the way that Google is going to better understand not only the intent behind a query as it relates to like the general audience's intent, but I think they'll understand more about the individual searcher and what they meant when they typed something based on what other signals Google has about them in previous searches that they've done.
Yeah, that's dead on. I mean, Google announced that basically they're using not just previous query, but your history in terms of searches to make a more personalized experience for your searches. Previous query initially was just like if you searched previously for football, then you search afterwards for jaguar, it's not going to show you a jaguar animal like the cat, and it's considered a cat or not. Anyway, or like the car, it's going to show you the football team. That was like generally previous query, but now it's more about like a long. I asked Google how much history are you using? They wouldn't tell me, which is very Google-like. But the natural language stuff is a lot about, at least a lot of search engines like Google and Bing are talking about what is understanding the query, and then maybe expanding the possible answers based on understanding that query in a different way. So that's a lot of, like you saw with Bing's new deep search, it's really, they said it's twofold. It's expanding the query so that it can match more documents in a more kind of like the hidden gems type of feature that we've been seeing. So, I mean, we've been seeing this a lot over the years. AI is not new to Google or to any real technology company. Google's been using AI a lot in search. We saw it with, obviously, feature snippets and so forth. So it should be interesting to see what happens there and how publishers handle that.
Personalization is what we're seeing right now, especially in the SGE experimentation as well. So this is another really broad question here is, do you think that the experiment that we know of as SGE, Search Generative Experience, is going to get rolled out next year? Barry, what do you think about that?
Yes. I mean, if they didn't, I think it'll surprise everybody. I mean, it's available for a lot of people now, and they're supposed to end this month and then probably extended, or who knows. But I do think I'd be surprised if SGE in some variation is not live next year.
Assuming you concur, Lily, yeah?
I go back and forth all the time. I mean, I agree with Barry that I think it would be a bit bizarre for them to not launch anything. But I think that there's different levels of SGE that we've seen throughout the year. When they started, it was pretty aggressive. It was like everywhere. For most types of queries, it was always taking over your screen. At least that's what I saw. It's been a big test, but now it's very limited. Like now sometimes like I want to see SGE and it doesn't show up. And a lot of the time it's like an opt-in button. So I still see certain things in there that are really problematic. And I have to imagine Google's seeing that on their end too. So I agree with Barry that I think that for the sake of like PR, they'll probably launch something, but it might be a really limited version of what we're seeing now.
It is actually being tested, and there's so many different pieces of real estate floating around that we really can't get a good handle on what they're changing, because it also is directly related to the topics and subtopics that gets expanded. So we keep on talking about it around here as the kind of the choose your own adventure book, right? You remember as you're going through, you have a whole lot of different experiences there, and the SGE is doing just that. So in that respect, talk about user behavior in that real estate, assuming that SGE is going to be there, right? User behavior is going to be modified by this experience, right? So how do you foresee user behaviors evolving with the advent of SGE, and what kind of strategies should SEO experts adopt to be able to cater to those user behaviors? Is it too early to tell, or do you have any prognostication there?
Yeah, I've been working on this like all year to see, just like I've shared this a lot in like conferences and stuff that I've spoken at, but like preemptively tried to control the conversation about certain random questions, just because that was like my experiment to see how SGE would show the answers to those questions. So I just added some random things about myself on my website. And it's been interesting to see how like in the beginning of the year when I added the content, SGE would get it wrong or like slightly right. And now it's pretty consistently not only getting it right, but like almost like showing off, like, here's the answer to the question. Here's all this other stuff that we know, there's like a level of damage control that I think people should be thinking about as far as like, what are all the possible things that SGE could say about you and your brand and your company and your people. But as far as like SEO optimizations beyond that, we really have to wait and see what the impact is, if we can measure it at all. And then I'm sure the industry will find interesting ways to optimize for it.
Absolutely. Bear, any thoughts on the user behavior side of things? I mean, the SERP is obviously changing, and user behavior comes right along with that. Are we going to be staying more and more inside of the SGE experience?
So like Lily said originally, the search, the interface itself, either it's going to look like a feature snippet, which is pretty common. Although back when feature snippets launched 10 years ago, SEOs went crazy about it and said it's going to kill SEO and search. And now we have SGE, which is going to kill SEO and search. So it depends on the implementation, I think. I know the Wall Street Journal just published an article this morning, and Wall Street Journal loves Google. They're big fans. That's sarcasm right there for those who don't know. But they published an estimate saying like 40% of like web traffic for most sites come from Google search. And AI is showing, Google SGE is showing about 75% of the time. And that number has changed a lot. I know the people that only publish some data around that as well. And they expect, Wall Street Journal said they expect publishers to lose around 20 to 40% of their traffic on that. I know our friend Glenn Gabe thinks it's going to be 100% traffic when it comes out in like 5 years or so, because AI will answer everything and anything, and people will just trust it. But it really depends about the trust. Can users trust? And that was one of your questions. Can users trust the results? And if they can, they're going to dig into the answers. If they can trust the results, they'll just trust them and not click and not ask for more information in general from publishers. So that's the main concern. There is this whole ecosystem thing that Google and search engines have to worry about to make sure content is continuing to be produced and it continues to learn from something. But I do think it really depends on the implementation in terms of how user behavior will change. And if it's more like a feature snippet, will users, do follow-up questions? How often are people doing follow-up questions? Will users click? And I know when Bing said they're going to go ahead and release that data to show Bing chat clicks versus Bing search clicks, they said, we released it, but we're putting it together with Bing search. So here's a total number of clicks from Bing search and Bing chat, but we're not going to tell you what was Bing chat versus what was Bing search. So they kind of skirted the issue. And when I asked Microsoft's VP, Michael Schechter, about that question, he's like, the net is positive, meaning you're getting clicks from Bing chat and Bing search, so you're getting more clicks in general, but we're not going to tell you how many clicks. So it's really one of those things that Google and Microsoft or Bing and so forth are going to like skirt around in terms of how users are interacting with it until maybe the Department of Justice forces them to reveal their emails when we actually share that information in the future.
That's a dark moment you just went there. Appreciate it.
True.
It is true. The user's behavior and trust in this experience is, I think, the most critical point for Google as they release that. We've talked about feature snippets and rich snippets affecting click-through rates and traffic. There's a lot of prognostication about how much traffic we're actually going to lose there in organic. Is this kind of the the evolution of this was more useful as a feature on Google as opposed to destination traffic, right? And I mean, rich snippets and answering questions that really didn't need a destination is one thing, but with all the citable sources that it's curating and not having those links very visible until you expand an accordion and grab a hold of that link, man, that's just hiding the cheese, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the query. And I think one big thing that we're leaving out, I know that we talked a little bit about like how like user experience and how people will use it. Of course, like our first assumption, everybody's first assumption is that everybody will use this thing and like it and enjoy the experience and maybe not need to click on anything. But that's like not considering this push and pull that's always happened on Google, which is that I think generally speaking, people like to click on websites, and that's why they use search engines. You know, I don't know that like users have always demanded like one true answer from Google. Of course, Google has its reasons for creating things like featured snippets, and people also ask, but like you can see like it's pretty easy to find anywhere, like people's feelings about using Google and what they want from Google. A lot of people will say, I want Google to go back to the way it was, where it was just like a list of websites, you know? So probably generally speaking, most people, especially young people, you know, teenagers are going to like SGE and they like this type of format. But I think there's a lot of people that will show with user behavior, with click data, that they want the old thing. Like they're going to keep scrolling and maybe like not really use SGE or find it annoying or something, you know?
Kind of like voting SGE off the island there with just behavior further and further down, because they're moving the real estate of 10 blue links further and further down, especially with ads, not only right after SGE, but also intersecting into like 3 and 4th organic. So organic's getting shuffled further and further down the way there. Metrics. Let's talk about performance metrics here for a second. Is that we know that users are going to behave differently. With the integration of SGE, what new metrics should SEO professionals focus on to effectively measure and optimize their strategies? Is there something there?
Yeah, just focus on DA and page rank. And no, I'm just joking again. I think it's always about the conversion. I mean, everybody talk about traffic or clicks, or I think for everybody, it's about what do you want your user to do once they're on your website, and how do you get those users to your website? Now, think about it, like a lot of these search engines that are implementing AI are discussing having plugins that integrate with them. I don't know, let's say you're United Airlines and you want to book a flight, maybe you could build a plugin that integrates with SGE or Copilot, formerly it was Bing Chat, so that when somebody wants to book a flight with something, maybe you come up and you're able to integrate and make that conversion happen without them going to your website. So I think you kind of have to think about, and a lot of that comes back to structured data and other things around there. So you provide the structured data, they use your structured data to benefit them, and they're not really giving you the click, but are they going to give you the conversion? And that's the big thing that people have to start thinking about, how that actually works. There's some examples of it. Will it work on day one for everybody? Absolutely not. They're only going to pick the top players. So there is a big concern around that, but it all comes down to the conversions, in my opinion.
Conversions and not other factors like what we used to be seeing as organic behavior of metrics like bounce rate and time on page. Are these things going to be valuable for the SEO professional?
Were they ever valuable?
Bounce rate's debatable, but time on page and dwell time and things like that, right? Those were factors of, okay, we're answering the questions for the audience, but if it's all being curated and in the SGE, should we even infer anything from user behavior anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, first of all, I'm glad that as an SEO community, we can finally just like agree that that's clicks are a thing. It's been 20 years of us like dancing around that topic and not being able to say it confidently, but it's so obvious, right? It's like, of course, Google would look at the way that people click and spend time on sites as the measure of whether or not they're liking what they're seeing. At least that's what I believe. But yeah, I think like, you know, this notion of like, should we still like think about this and that because SGE is happening? I don't know. I think like for everything that SGE could potentially take away, there's a lot of other new opportunities that I think will spring up, not just through SGE, but like Google announced all kinds of other features, which I'm sure Barry knows encyclopedically, all of them and all the dates that they came out. But like, you know, there's so many different opportunities to show up in organic results. And it's not just the 10 blue links as we know them or SGE. There's like a lot of other opportunities going on.
So not taking SGE and pivoting so much into SGE until you actually can see what's happening. That's one key factor, right? Not hyper-reactive. And we've also learned that from all the different core updates. You just can't really react to these things, right, until you actually see how everything bears out. But user behavior, we're going to get freaked out if we lose 40% of our traffic, right?
Yeah.
Obviously.
It is like just if and when SGE gets launched, our industry should put a lot of pressure on Google Search Console to give us any type of reporting, because without it, it's going to be useless to even have like these types of conversations.
Just like we've been doing for the feature snippets and all that stuff, and they still haven't given it to us. So I don't know how much pressure. I've been putting a tremendous amount of pressure on like higher ups there, and it's always like, oh, it's just a beta now. We'll see about it. And you saw how Bing implemented it, so it's. I'm not too confident Google's going to do anything here unless it's positive for us, and it's not going to. This is not going to be positive in general. But in terms of the metrics, you're talking about like how to rank in SGE. That's your question. I don't. It's the same thing. Google said that the stuff they generally will cite in the SGE results or use as examples are stuff they would rank well anyway. I believe there are studies that show yes for some and no for others, and depends on like if you look at certain queries. I think the only biggest study was from Bartos. And I think it's like it depends on also when you did the searches also. So and the AI is constantly changing and so forth. So I think this is a lot of questions in the air, and you got to do what's best for your audience. And I think you can't depend on Google alone. And that's the big takeaway from this: is don't depend on search for everything, because build up your mailing list while you can, build up your subscriber base, build up your whatever you can to get alternative traffic from social or whatever. To do all that while we still have something, because you don't know what tomorrow will bring.
Amen. And that's a very important principle to actually steer by, because we're not going to be able to predict anything in this space, and Google's going to do what Google's want to do. However, we also know it's always going to be monetizing that real estate. That has to be a valuable environment for users, because it's going to be passing the ads through there as well. I want to pivot this over to what you foresee of SGE and how it affects possibly local strategies as well. I understand that you're not going to be able to track ranking here, but we're also seeing local packs and local insertions into that SGE. What do you think local businesses and SMBs can actually do with this coming at them?
Yeah, I think this is actually like a really big opportunity for local. I mean, I don't know, like we've been talking about, I don't know how much you can necessarily influence within there, but what's neat about SGE is it does a version of what Google Maps does, but it's not an exact replica of Google Maps. And it seems to be it's like a mix between what data they have from Google Maps and then the data that they have from organic search to like corroborate why they chose a certain list of businesses for something. So you can say like best plumber in Brooklyn, and you'll get certain results obviously in Google Maps, but then you won't necessarily get the same ones in SGE, and the ones in SGE will say, well, we noticed that, a bunch of people said this thing on this other site about this plumber. So of course, like all things in local SEO and SEO in general, people will try to find ways to spam that. But I think what's exciting about it is that we're getting more third-party signals as a ranking factor in SGE than we did with Google Maps.
That's actually really, really valuable. Coupling with that, the opportunity to be able to answer questions, because some of your recent reporting, Lily, you were actually showcasing reviews of products in personalized aspect, literally higher valuable, authentic type of reviews. If you can follow that breadcrumb a little bit further, as companies can actually give their insight, how they treat their clients or what their insight is about how to do landscaping in this area, the suburb that you're in, that could very well be more useful than other types of websites that have a bit more authority, right?
Yeah, and another cool thing about SGE is that it pulls from a lot more places than you would expect to get the answer to the question. So one thing they are doing is like if they know confidently that, let's say the plumbing company, this is their website, but then this is their Twitter X account, or this is their LinkedIn account. If that plumbing company said something on LinkedIn or said something on X, SGE will show that. Like if you say like when were they founded, and if they said we were founded in 1985 on X, it'll pull that in. So it's like Google Maps doesn't do that, So we're actually getting a lot more rich information about local businesses as well.
Fantastic. And that gives us the ability to manage a lot of other properties, not just domain authority and stockpiling a lot of content in our website. So again, to your point, Barry, is that we need to make sure that we're paying attention to all the different channels. And if Google's paying attention to those channels, that type of additional investment is going to be seen and make its way potentially into SGE as well. Got a question though. Well, again, we don't know this area. It's all hypothetical because we just don't see it in the water yet, except for testing. What should SEOs prepare for? What skills should they be preparing for? So if we're seeing AI take such a hold inside of SERP, right? What should we be stacking up on and enhancing our skills with?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that has to do around prompts, and SEOs trying to learn how users will prompt these AI engines. Obviously, with certain AI elements, it's much more complicated, like using Midjourney is much more complicated than going to Bing Chat or going to Google SGE or Bard. But then being aware and tracking what these responses are saying about your clients or your own company. Because like Lily said, it could come, you could post something on X and it could use that to answer a question, but what if it's wrong? Or what if you had a typo? Or what if you wrote the wrong number in there? Google is interesting because Google is going to probably try to correlate that with not just what's said on social, but also what's on your website. Forever, Google's local packs, not forever, for the past like few years, Google's local pack had what's called website mentions. So it would actually include text from the actual website based on maybe your previous query or your exact query, to see other things that the website says about its own company. And obviously incorporating that with third parties is also, it's like, I know Google, as people have reported that, Google's being very sensitive and careful about what it answers for certain types of queries as well. So you have to also be, how sensitive are the queries? What topics are they in? Is it health? Is it not? I know initially Google's like, we're not going to show any SGE responses for health, and they did anyway. So I'm not sure why they said that. But I think it's a lot of things that people have to keep track of is how will their customers search in SGE? What are the responses that will come up? What will the popular follow-ups be? Maybe people also ask and help with that a little bit. But I think a lot of that is around, tracking those types of things that people might see ahead of time. This way you can prepare yourself and maybe provide better inputs for that data through your website or through other channels.
Lily, thoughts about that?
Yeah, those are great points. I think it's going to be really hard to track, as we all know, because it's going to be like everyone's going to be having a different experience and seeing SGE produce different answers, which makes it even more complicated. But like something I've been seeing more of lately, which is pretty interesting, is if you ask SGE who is, let's say, Rusty Brick, for example, and I haven't actually done this search, but just using it as an example, if Rusty Brick said on its website or on its homepage, Rusty Brick does XYZ thing, SGE will often pull that in. And you can see this getting pulled in from category page descriptions. You can see it from about pages. A lot of the times it does this thing where I'm wondering if this is something that Google does intentionally. When you type certain qualitative branded questions, so is Rusty Brick a good company, for example, it won't show results from Rusty Brick. It'll show results from everywhere else, almost as if it's like negating that domain, which is actually what Google says to do in the search quality guidelines when people are looking for qualitative information about brands. So I always encourage people, this is part of EEAT, like look at the questions people are asking about you and your brand. If you have SGE enabled as a tester, like ask those questions into SGE, because sometimes, like I always share this example when I talk about it, but like there's another Lily Ray that they have, or they thought who was what I was talking about, was actually a character in The Secret Life of Bees. So I would like say information about her and then information about me in the same sentence. And I was like, that's not good. So the more clarity that you can provide, and the more like you can answer questions concisely, the way that we always do with SEO, I think that'll help to show up better in there.
You're really going to put on your website, this is not the Lily Ray that was in. Analyzing behavior on SGE has to be one of the skills, and it has to be one of the regular practices, because that's kind of the response that we're trained to see in entity relationships when it comes down to brand SERP, as well as just knowledge panels. So we can actually guide content towards that mirror that we're seeing reflected back to us from Google. How significant is predictive analytics going to be in SEO strategy development specifically? And what role do you think AI is going to play? Because is that we got to be able to match bot to bot almost, right? Is be able to forecast more than what you're actually putting on your site or your content, be able to match some of the needs that the AI engine's actually giving us. What are those techniques? Can you predict what we could be using in the near future?
We want to have the AI type, like you said, bot to bot. I mean, the AI is going to be doing the predictive stuff. So I don't know. It's this Terminator world where you have robots fighting against robots. So I think it's too early to say. I mean, a lot of every single tool set you see out there, not just in the SEO world, is touting they have AI built into it. So every single tool has these things out there that have AI to like, and can work out SGE related stuff specifically. So yeah, I mean, it's a great time to be in the SEO tool set business. It's probably a lot of fun for people to do this stuff. It's also probably very scary for some of the companies that have been in for a while. But I think a lot of them, like every single tool you use, it's everything saying how they have AI and they're an AI company and so forth. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of these tools are using AI to do any type of analysis for you. And then you have the AI trying to be faster than the next AI in order to figure out what's going to happen next. So I don't know. I don't know the answer fully. So
It is still a homogenization, though. AI is just reflecting back what it's learning from the world, right? So
John Mueller said that. They said, I think he a quote. They basically said that any AI generated content is by definition content that's made up from something else that's already on the web, so it's not really original. But that's most of the content in the world anyway, unless you're writing some unique research paper, which most of us don't do, I guess. Trump said this, Biden said that. It's just John Mueller said this, like in my case. So why can't the AI do that? So I don't know. I don't know why I can't be replaced by AI.
We've got theories that you are actually AI, Barry, for the amount of content that you're cranking out on a daily basis. Just kidding. One of the questions from the audience, Justin, asked, what strategies can small businesses adopt to compete effectively against larger players? I'm going to change that around a little bit because we actually have given some good strategies here. But do you think this is a level setter that small businesses and smaller content can actually truly compete with larger, more dominant players now?
In SGE, yeah. I mean, I think Barry mentioned before. I don't know if Google was the one that said this, but I think what ranks in SGE should largely be what's ranking already. Is that okay? That's not true. At least from what I've seen and what Tom Capper did a study at MosCon or whatever, a very small study, but a lot of us have been seeing a lot of weirdness with regard to what SGE sources. And yeah, maybe broadly speaking, it's generally what you'll see in, let's say, the top 20 results. But I've seen many, many, many examples where it seems like for whatever reason, Google's pulling from different, I don't want to say different index, but I see a lot of UK e-commerce websites here in the US and SGE. They're not ranking in the top 20 for the keyword that I search for. Sometimes I'll see health content from Pakistan answering a health query that I did in English in the US in SGE. And then I'll look at the top 100 results and it doesn't rank there. So I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe those are anomalies, but I do think, to the original question, maybe there's actually some opportunity with small businesses, because if Google knows that you have the better answer, maybe they're a little bit broader with who gets to appear in SGE.
I've even seen examples of pages at 404 in the citations. Have you seen that? It's insane. But the learning models, their data is from, historically, it takes more time for processing, so it's older content. It's not all that fresh. Although there are examples, obviously, with Bing Chat using Prometheus and also Google getting timely content. But for non-timely types of events, a lot of that content is kind of old. I've seen, especially when I do some vanity searches around search topics, like Google updates and stuff, it's pulling from people that might not even cite the source from Google, or might not cite unconfirmed update, and it's older content that's like you said, sometimes from other countries that maybe took on this later, and it seems to be lower quality, but it does give us opportunity to create lots of spam that gets indexed into search and makes our jobs easier.
That's what we need.
That's interesting that the 404s are popping up there, because there's a lagging indicator of what it thought was actually good, and that's disappeared. Another question from the audience was actually asking about using AI to possibly, this is from Anthony Simmons, can AI actually lead to new methods of identifying and acquiring quality backlinks as well? So in the midst of all of this, is AI going to keep up with what is valuable out there? And I guess that's kind of a rhetorical question. What do you guys think about using AI for actually identifying quality that maybe the AI of Google believes is quality now?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, any SEO task that we've done in any way can be done with AI. It's just a question of how are you constructing, the tooling and the prompts and now that they have these data analysis capabilities, like you can put all kinds of data into the AI and it'll tell you things that it observed that you might have not noticed before. So I think like, of course that's possible. I would just like, you would need to figure out, reverse engineer Google's algorithms from a link perspective, which I guess a lot of the tools are trying to do, but that sounds complicated. However, I think we've mentioned before, I think we'll see a lot of these SEO tools, like Barry said, they're probably having a lot of fun figuring out how to use AI to better, provide insights. So I think that's something that'll happen, but like, I don't know, trying to reverse engineer something to find better backlinks. The problem with these tactics is that if they end up with you doing something that technically goes against Google's guidelines, it's only a matter of time until Google figures it out. So there's usually a short window of that type of thing succeeding. Not saying finding links is against their guidelines, but like, people are looking for a lot of exploits and a lot of hacks. And as we all know here, like they don't last a very long time.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that response to one of the questions there. To both of you here, we're focused on SGE. Obviously, this is the topic du jour here. But it's also because it's the nice and shiny thing in the room, right? But to both of you, what should we be looking at in 2024 that really hasn't made it to the top of SEO chatter? Because I know we have a long history of EAT and concepts like that. Leah, I'll give it to you first. If SGE is the bug light, right, what should we really be looking at from a quality standpoint?
You mean a quality standpoint for SGE, or do you mean something else that maybe we should be talking about separate? Okay. Yeah, I honestly, I used to talk a lot about SGE earlier this year, and now I've been talking and focusing about a lot of other things because I think there's a lot of other really big stuff happening. Personally, my team at AMSIV and I are really obsessed with Google Discover. That's a huge traffic source for a lot of our clients, and there's a lot going on there, There seems to be more of an interplay between search and discover. I think a bigger question the SEO industry should be asking is what happens if Google Discover gets rolled to desktop? I think that's a very big deal. And, perspectives, the follow feature, all these things that are making search more authentic, more human-oriented, more social. That's what we're really focusing on.
Excellent. Barry, to you, what should we be looking at besides SGE?
Yeah, I mean, again, if we want to stay in the AI realm, I guess I think plugins around how like OpenAI's ChatGPT or Bing Chat or Google will implement plugins. I think that's going to be something that most large businesses need to be concerned about. But yeah, everything Lily said as well is important. But again, also the diversification of your search traffic to other sources like social, email, referral, other methods of getting traffic, and always mobile apps aren't going anywhere anyway. Also, so we have your phone, and think about mobile app development. I know it was a topic from like when first Apple and Google launched their phones, but that's still very important. The whole Apple getting into the whole Vision Pro, Oculus types of thing. Obviously, the VR, AR stuff is super interesting. It was very interesting initially, but now that Apple's getting into it, we'll see what they could do with it. Because Apple makes everything, I can see from behind me, all the Apple boxes, they make it a little bit more interesting. So we'll see. I mean, I think the AR, VR, plugins, and everything Lily said is very important.
Very good. I'll throw my hat in the ring regarding user experience on websites. Doing more with less traffic could very well be one of the most important things. Watching what your users are experiencing and making sure that you're satisfying them as they're at the website, because we could very well have less traffic. All right, folks, I appreciate the time today. I really do. It's always a pleasure talking with both of you. We have one more question out of the audience, and if we can pivot around, in considering SEE's impact, how might content diversity across a website be affected? Should content creators focus more on niche topics or broaden their scope to appeal to AI-driven search engines?
Well, I think that the content creators should focus on the areas that they have true demonstrated experience and expertise, and not think as much about like what to target as like writing about what you know, and then using, SEO like technology or insights to kind of guide how you write it, but like start from what you actually know about.
Yeah, so agree. It's like pet peeve. Like people are telling me, all the time, like, well, how should I write? I'm like, write what you know and make sure you enjoy writing it. Otherwise, don't write it.
Without any other final questions from our audience, we do really appreciate the participation there. Any final thoughts? Barry, I'll give you the final thought here and then go over to Lily.
time to wrap it up and just find some new industry to work in.
Yeah.
Sarcasm.
So optimistic. No, I am just like praying to Google to give us like 3 weeks off. Just like no new updates, no new big product releases, just like 3 weeks. That's my prayer for Google.
Give us a break, guys, please. It's been the highest level of volatility, what now, 18, 20 months, 24 months, something like that.
We're going to have it same as always, yeah.
Today, Erin Sparks led a riveting discussion where Lily Ray and Barry Schwartz shared their insights and predictions that will help us navigate the SEO challenges of 2024. Thank you for your time. Be sure to subscribe and join the next episode of the Do Follow podcast.